Today on the Wrestling Roundtable, the 2011 year in review and Brock Lesnar's careers. Welcome back to the Wrestling Roundtable. The season premiere for Season 5 could be our last season, but let's make it a good one, and we need your support. If everyone comes out and supports the show, maybe it won't be the last season, but we're hoping to go out with a bang, and let's introduce the panel. But before I do get to the panel, I wanted to say thank you to the panel, because every time we do an upload for our video shows, people always ask, where's so-and-so? Bring back so-and-so, like I can bring people back like magic. No one who's been on the show is banned from the show. They can come back if they can and if they want to. Everyone here, because it was very difficult arranging this, are here because they can be here and because they want to be here. So I hope you appreciate it as much as I do. So to the panel, on my left, which is your right, Orlando O'Neill, a fan of 21 years. To my right, which is your left, it's the Wills. First up, Will Effin Brooks, who is in our chat room every Monday night during Raw. He's been a fan of 23 years. And Will TLD Vafidez, who's been a fan of 22 years. I'm the host, Eric Santamaria, been a fan of 23 years. And before we get down to the nitty-gritty, which is the year in review, 2011 just passed, of course, and we want to recap the whole year. But before we do, we're starting off with MMA. MMA is going to bookend the show. If you don't like it, suck my dick. But first up, speaking of mixed martial arts, we're on Go Fight Live, of course. We're featured on Go Fight Live, among other places. And you can download or stream by Go Fight Live events on our site. If you go to the video/audio section, go down to matches, and you can find Go Fight Live events, and you can purchase it through our site. So if you're going to buy Ring of Honor, MMA, Muay Thai, boxing, whatever is featured on Go Fight Live, you can do it on WrestlingRoundtable.com. Now, first up, mixed martial arts. Big year for MMA in 2011, and the big entity, which is Zuffa, had a really stellar year. First up, we've got them buying Strikeforce right after they started the World Heavyweight Grand Prix, and we've seen how they've really let it be itself, which is pretty much a bad thing. Strikeforce is like the TNA of MMA, and that hasn't changed. Ouch. And Dana White, you can see he's like getting driven crazy by some of this stuff. Like, I can't wait to get my hands on it. Half the champions are already signed to UFC. They're vacant. We saw Cyborg get suspended. That's a big blow to the women's division, even though they have the big fight with Tate and Rousey coming up. But still, Strikeforce seems like it's going about business as usual, and I don't think that's a really good thing. So we're almost a year in. How do you think it's going so far?
Going good. I mean, it kind of sucks all these big names are retiring now or getting injured, but it's still rolling along. Pay-per-views are still looking good. They're making money.
Eventually, this is going to come together.
I don't know why they even bothered re-signing with Showtime for a couple more years.
I mean, this is eventually going to go to a point where people are going to want to say, you know what, UFC's just dominating. They're taking all the talent. It's going to happen at one point. I mean, what's the point of having a Strikeforce show? You have absolutely no talent you don't even know.
It's going to be the minor leagues.
Right.
Well, they did it with WEC, which I thought was good in and of itself. And they merged that eventually.
Well, that's because it was different weight classes, so that's why it was successful. It was different weight classes. They weren't competing with itself.
Whereas now they're already integrating all the heavyweights over.
I really don't like the way that they're doing it with the Strikeforce. It kind of feels like a whole reversal of the WWF invasion, how WWF took all the sucky WCW wrestlers and then took the great wrestlers, but now UFC has all the great Strikeforce guys and letting this regular sucky Strikeforce guys just keep going on their own.
Jardine just challenged for the middleweight title in his first fight in that weight class. What does that tell you about their depth? And they're doing that with Nate Marquardt, too.
Yeah,
he's going to walk in and get a shot, too.
Yeah, because that title's vacant right now.
Right. So, at any rate, from buying Strikeforce, the number 2 promotion in the country, then we move on to their biggest show of the year, which I was very happy to attend in Toronto at the former Skydome in Rogers Center. 55,000 plus fans. Was this a seminal moment for mixed martial arts? Was this like the pinnacle?
No. And I can tell you right now, it's going to get bigger.
Oh, yeah.
And I can tell you right now, I already have the venue when they're going to do it. There's no time date, there's no anything going on, but Cowboy Stadium. It holds 100,000 people, and the HD TV screen they have, it goes like from the 20-yard line to the 20-yard line. So if you're in the nosebleed section, you're still watching in HD, and you can still look down and see it with binoculars.
Looks like they're going to beat boxing to that with that Pacquiao-Mayweather fight. That's never going to happen.
He's correct on having a U.S. type show where we're going to get the biggest thing. To me, it's always going to be the Garden. That is going to be the spot. Right. Or it's going to be like something like MetLife or even Cowboy Stadium. But I would say the Garden because that's the biggest challenge I think they're going to have.
Just the name alone is
just the
symbolic.
name alone, Just putting MSG on a UFC event is going to be a big show. That is money. Mm-hmm. And until the stupid commission is like all against MMA and not realizing the potential value that you can get money-wise out of it.
I think Vince McMahon is paying off the commission to not let him in that building.
That's right.
He knows it'll be like the final dagger.
Well, before there's even thought of Cowboy Stadium, there is going to be a big show in Brazil coming up, and that seems like a market that they might actually go with a 100,000 seat stadium show
easily.
Before that. So there's Rogers Center in Toronto. That in Brazil, you think we're going to see a big MMA show on that scale domestically, or do they need like a GSP Silva dream fight for that to headline?
It would help.
It definitely would help. I'd say imagine this time next year, Silva's still middleweight champion, Jones is still light heavyweight champion. Imagine those two in Dallas Stadium.
Silva seems like he's very against that fight ever happening.
He's against a lot of fights happening.
He was against fighting Machida when he was champion, so who else is he going to fight after Sonnen?
Well,
say he goes past Sonnen.
Talking about if they go to Madison Square Garden and make it, that would be symbolic of making it. Well, couldn't you say that about the Fox deal? That was a very big deal this year. They got on mainstream America, on not cable. This is regular Fox, and not just to mention Fox, also including, of course, all their subsidiaries with FX and Fuel. This is a huge deal for them. 7 years, I think $100 million a year. And yeah, so far the shows haven't delivered for opposite reasons, but they have done huge ratings. Is this just the beginning?
Oh, totally the beginning. You just say yourself, that's 7 years. They're going to probably do what, 4 a year? And they're always going to put at least one name on each one of them. So you're probably going to see a title fight on each one of them.
And that's just regular Fox. We've seen between Fuel and FX tons of free stuff this year.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking. This was the biggest thing that I think happened the entire MMA. I think that having UFC on like the shows where the NFL Network is on, where they have FX now, they have a channel that now they're going to have a live Ultimate Fighter. This is taking it to another level. And even though, like I said, the shows were not that great, they have still, at least production-wise, I think they look a lot better. I think having Fox as their network is going to be huge.
And they use Cook Menifee, the guy from NFL Sunday.
Right, and they're using the NFL. They're using NFL music. They're making it feel like it's a new sport, and they're trying to introduce it to an audience that has never seen it before, and I guarantee a lot haven't.
Right, we're a long way from years ago where they're banned on pay-per-view. Right. Now they're on Fox.
Yeah, the whole fan base of MMA is just going to grow and keep on growing, especially because they're on Fox. And a lot of the naysayers who used to say UFC and MMA is human cockfighting, now they're being educated. Now,
screw you, John McCain.
Now with UFC on Fox, now people are saying, man, these guys are true, real athletes who train in more than just wrestling and boxing. They do kickboxing,
a little of a
jiu-jitsu.
lot of things.
Yeah, you have to be a great, well-rounded fighter.
No more James Toney.
I think John McCain's come around since they started regulating a little more. But you mentioned the Ultimate Fighter,
right?
And I think that's a key part of their international expansion because not just the Dominic Cruz Uriah Faber one, they're doing one simultaneously in Brazil. And I think integrating a lot of these lighter weight fighters, like we talked about WEC, bringing those fighters in, and now they were taping. Ben Henderson's challenging Frankie Edgar for the lightweight title. Right. So it seems like the lighter weight guys are getting some more spotlight, and we haven't even gotten to the flyweights yet. So do you think that's part of UFC strategy to expand internationally, to bring lighter weight guys in? So maybe if they go someplace like Mexico or Japan, this seems like it's part of their plan, don't you think?
Absolutely. You have to grow. The pay-per-view nights in Japan. And they got it, and they want to get the Asian market, and they're going to Brazil. They're doing they're making the head office now, opening up in Brazil. You got to expand, you got to get a name out there, and you got to get more cultures involved.
I look at it more of as a business aspect as well. You look at it as I'm trying to grow an audience, and we're trying to grow. Not only say we have great U.S. fighters, but there's some great fighters all over the world, and they're bringing everybody in. They're going to different markets to try to get that audience, and I think they're doing a great job. The crowds are there clearly.
Oh yeah.
Without a doubt. It's all about now, are they watching the pay-per-view? Are they going to the bars? Are they ordering it? It's all those different things.
And also, if you want to expand in Asia and Latin America, of course, you're going to need those lighter weight classes because the men in those countries are usually smaller, lighter, so now it gives them an opportunity to earn fame and be famous in their home countries also.
Tell that to Yao Ming and Cain Velasquez, man. Yeah.
Well, I would say the non-Zuffa story of the year would be Viacom buying a majority stake in Bellator Fighting Championship. Of course, they can't capitalize on that for another year or so once UFC's finally off Spike TV due to the rights. But what do you think that means for the future of at least American MMA? What is the landscape going to look like once Bellator Because obviously they're going to survive because of this money once they get more exposure on Spike.
It's going to be huge. And I say that because Viacom is the 4th largest media conglomerate in the United States. So at the very least, you're going to see them way more on TV, and they're going to get their name out there a lot more. And again, their bread butter was the lighter weight guys, so maybe they have an easier time getting them rather than UFC just growing these divisions.
Well, we also mentioned some of the names that have really dropped off the radar in the past year. Just retiring this year alone was Randy Couture, Brock Lesnar. Crow Cop is having his last kickboxing fight soon. We don't know about BJ Penn and Matt Hughes if they're going to stick with that or not. But also, Tito Ortiz and Wanderlei Silva are coming up on the end of their careers. Do you think there's going to be a period where they need some bigger draws for MMA to fill Texas Stadium or something like that? Because I don't know if John Jones is necessarily there right now. Frankie Edgar, as much as they push him, I don't think he's there right now either. And GSP is going to be out most of the year. Is there going to be a problem? Maybe unforeseen circumstances with injuries and stuff of making names, draws out of these fighters soon.
No, I kind of think it's the evolution of the sport. The great fighters, they're going to grow old and then pass the torches down. Just as long as the UFC keeps putting out a great product, great fights, and great fights that people want to see, then the fans are going to go out and pay their money to go see it.
Right. And MMA is so unpredictable, so a lot of the fighters have to make themselves. They ain't going to be made big unless they are training hard and they really perform well and also make a name for themselves, even if they have to do some weird things like out of the weird.
Rashad Evans,
like even like
started
acting. Showing even like exactly. Even if you're doing like some kind of acting skill, these are skills to use because you got to get your brand out there. You're part of a brand, and that's how I look at it. I mean, they're going to keep growing. There's no doubt. As long as there's no terrible shows to kind of get the mood down, then which I don't see.
You don't cut promos in UFC. You got to get it all done in the cage.
Well, Chael Sonnen does, I guess.
Yes.
But speaking of making yourself,
Thank
who
you.
would you say is Fighter of the Year? I think it's a pretty obvious choice.
Well, I mean, John Jones is definitely going to be the most obvious answer to that one.
Maybe it's the right one.
But
I don't think you could argue against
Well,
it.
I would also say Frankie Edgar as well, because especially like this show coming up with Ben Henderson that on this taping.
Well, he had the 2 fights with BJ
Right.
Penn, but then he started last year with the great fight against Edgar.
Right.
And
Maynard.
Excuse me, against Ray Maynard, and then he got the win over him in the rubber match and really
And
solidified
plus,
himself.
Dana White's kind of giving him the pat on the shoulder, saying this guy is the real deal.
Yeah.
Fighter of the Year.
I really want to say Junior Dos Santos. I did want to, but he only fought twice, and he fought an anorexic Shane McCarwin and a really rusty Cain Velasquez.
It's a good fight, though.
It was a good fight, but I mean, you gotta go bones. He beat Bader, he beat Rua, he beat Jackson, and I mean, B.A. Baracus. I mean, come on, you gotta kick his ass. And Machida.
Convincingly, too.
And I looked it up. Actually, Quentin Jackson is the first submission loss since July 29th of 2001. First submission loss in 11 years. He kicked the crap out of Machida, man. Made him look stupid when he just dropped him, like whatever, dude.
I'm definitely going to go John Bones Jones. He beat 3 former UFC light heavyweight champions in the same year. Again, he beat Rampage by submission. He gave Machida his first submission loss. He defeated Shogun to be a TKO. He was basically the most dominant person in mixed martial arts this whole year.
There's other guys who have had great years, like Donald Cerrone and et cetera, that we've talked about, but I never hear Dan Henderson. He went up to heavyweight and beat Fedor. I guess everybody does now, but still, it was something for him to challenge the legend. It was a dream fight. Then he came to UFC, returned to UFC, and beat Shogun Rua in what people kept saying was the best fight ever, and he got the nod there, but now that we mention it, Fight of the Year. Would Rua and Henderson be up there?
I would
for
say
you?
Guido Henderson actually was one of my
Yeah,
favorites.
The other Hendo.
Yeah, that one was one of my favorites. That was on the UFC Fox show, and I was like, how come they didn't air that?
Yes.
Because
Definitely.
there was enough time.
Everyone thought that, yeah.
I mean, I think everyone felt that way, but that fight was tremendous. These guys just went back and forth, and the fact it went unanimous decision, I would love to see another fight between those two.
January 1st, 2001, Edgar versus Maynard, UFC 125, the draw. And I hate draws. I think if you have a draw, let him fight for another 2 minutes.
Five more
rounds.
minutes.
I know five rounds, 25 minutes fighting, and they were fighting the whole time. And you got to give Maynard a lot of credit. He kicked the crap out in the first 2 rounds, and then Edgar made that great comeback. I got to give Frankie a lot of credit for that. And the rubber match was really good, too, but I got to give the draw was the best fight.
I know people hate draws, but that fight was so close. It was
2 more minutes. UFC should really implement that in overtime. 2 minutes if it's a draw.
Shogun Hendo, UFC 139. I really wasn't expecting much coming out of this fight because I thought, okay, he's old. Shogun just got his ass whooped by Jones. But man, for 5 rounds, these guys put on a war. Henderson dominated the first, and then he kind of gassed out, and Shogun kind of took over. But it really went back and forth the whole fight.
Dominic Cruz and Uriah Faber, they're coming up on their 3rd match, but this one was really good too. Their 2nd one, Cruz got the decision, but the same night as 139, the Rua Hendo Fight of the Year, greatest fight ever, Bellator had a fight that night that was also really good. Eddie Alvarez losing to Michael Chandler. That was a really great fight. Doesn't get a lot of play, but unfortunately, we're going to have to go to a break. Coming up next, 2011 year in review for professional wrestling. Welcome back to the Wrestling Roundtable. We didn't cover Show of the Year. If you want to give your opinion on what you think the MMA Show of the Year was, call into the radio show, Wrestling Roundtable Radio, Tuesdays at 11 p.m. on Blog Talk Radio, 347-857-4647, and share your thoughts, opinions, or even questions on MMA, pro wrestling, whatever you want to talk about. Check us out on Blog Talk Radio. We're going to move on now to the year in review for pro wrestling in 2011. And of course, we have to start with, like we did with Zuffa, WWE, and what's the big thing? The Summer of Punk 2.0. This work shoot that he cut, and then he came back in the summer, the two champions, quote unquote, and then we saw what happened from there. So, being that the Summer of Punk played out that way, and Punk really is someone that really, the level of fame and fandom that he got last year is really something I felt he could have always had since they signed him. And it seems like they've never really trusted him up until he played his little hardball with the contract and got the stardom that he felt he deserved. So, being that the summer started so hot with that promo that got everybody buzzing, how do you think it ended up?
Well, I kind of think they screwed up, but not enough to ruin the whole thing. I wish I could have been in a meeting room where they said, how are we going to get Punk over? I got it. Let's get Kevin Nash in there. Who the fuck thought of that?
I think we could figure out who thought of Kevin
But
Nash.
who could have, now I said that Triple H, that sucks. But no, like, they brought him back too quickly. It was like less than a month he was back on TV. They should have had him, like, literally off TV at least until October, the pay-per-view. Like, I would have had him on Leno or Letterman or, like, fucking Conan. All the other shows, just cutting promos how much the WF sucks. And it's like, I got the title. Look at that title. It's a bullshit title.
Yeah.
Just building this stuff, getting people, who the fuck's this guy? And like, wow, I'm going to check this out. They're doing something here.
I think if people knew, and there were some cynics among us, of course, who were playing a wait-and-see approach, and I'm not saying to the degree of, they'll fuck it up anyway, but still, we saw how it ended up.
Right.
If you knew how it was going to end up, you're like, how the hell would they have ended up there with Kevin Nash and texting and Johnny Ace?
And not having any confidence in Triple H.
Right, it started off great. I think bringing it back at SummerSlam was okay, and the reason why was because...
I disagree with that.
Well, the reason why is because, again, it's all business related. It's two champions against each other at SummerSlam. That's what they were trying to build it up as, and that's what they tried to do. Now, it was hot at the end because when Kevin Nash came out and screwed him out of the belt, that was kind of interesting. That was something new. You didn't see that coming. I mean, no one saw Kevin Nash coming out doing that. And then they could have really built up something with Nash, and then we had like The Miz and R-Truth going outside. They could have built a lot of that together, and they didn't do it. And something must have fell apart where it crashed a lot of the main plans because everything got a little weird around that time too.
They always want to go back and say, oh, we didn't have a main event for SummerSlam. Imagine John Cena versus Rey Mysterio for
what
the
they
title.
should have done. Yeah.
That should have been the main event for SummerSlam. The kids would have bought that. That's perfect PG WWE right there.
Right.
CM Punk stays
In California.
In California, CM Punk stays off TV. He goes wherever he wants with the title. Walking around, goes on TV shows. He was doing his thing on Twitter, taking pictures with the title.
Right. In the refrigerator.
fridge.
Yeah,
Well,
fridge.
even with that, he could have went to SummerSlam and just been in the crowd and just held up the belt
right,
along those
exactly.
lines.
Honestly, I think it would have been better served if he just was off TV completely, not even in the crowd.
Okay, but I think even Punk will concede he feels he came back too soon. I think he understands the company perspective. This is the second biggest show of the year. We're trying to make this a second
he mentioned
WrestleMania
that.
type thing, and we needed it. But
Could have saved a Survivor Series, though.
if he had come out after the Ray Cena match, which is something they've never done, with two of their biggest draws, and I think it would have been great, he still could have been involved in it.
Yeah.
But him getting the title, Daniel Bryan getting the other one, Zack Ryder finally, a month too late, but finally getting the U.S. title, Dolph Ziggler getting somewhat of a push. Cody Rhodes, too, getting the Intercontinental, a long reign for him, which is great. You get the impression that maybe they're finally making that shift that we've been complaining about for years. Too much relying on old names, passed the torch already.
Right.
Do you think that's legit? Is it too early to say?
No, I think it's. I was joking around. It's like the new generation V2 version 2, because like it is like if you look at one point, all the wrestlers who were champions were small guys. It was like Eric Boom, it was Daniel Bryan, it was CM Punk, and Cody Rhodes. All the guys were small, technically speaking. You know, like bigger than us, but small guys in the wrestling world. And they're relying more on talent and more in-ring ability, which is what the rest should have probably done, like say 3 or 4 years ago.
But here's the thing with that, though. When Daniel Bryan and Punk take pictures together in the back and everyone starts being like, it's like Eddie and Benoit. Well, what people so soon forget about those two, who we do not speak of in Guerrero at WrestleMania 20, is it didn't last long at all.
No. I like that they're pushing the talent. I think these guys have talent, but they have to have the star appeal, and that's something that's a little bit missing right now.
A little bit.
They're
They're not drawing.
Yeah,
just
they're
by
not
the
drawing.
numbers on Raw.
Yeah, you can see the numbers on Raw and pay-per-view that they're still relying on The Rock. I mean, WrestleMania 29 is built around 3 matches that include Attitude Era stars.
Right.
So that's why it's like, well, they haven't fully gotten there. Punk is kind of getting to that level where they're trying to give him that little rub a little bit. He's not fully there yet either, because people don't even know who that guy is. You have to get them out there. Everyone knows who John Cena is. They need their next John Cena, and they need the villains or they need the heroes to be at almost that level, kind of like with the Attitude Era where everybody was known.
WWE's doing a great job of pushing their young talent. They're putting on great matches on TV, on pay-per-view.
But is that enough?
No, it's not enough,
No.
because, I mean, look at the press conference they had for WrestleMania 29.
Right.
They have The Rock. They have Triple H. They have Mark Henry. They have John Cena. And we're the 2 champions.
Right.
Nowhere to be seen.
Well, I think WrestleMania though has so much star power. They're bringing them in so they can showcase these guys.
Right.
Give them like the same thing we always talk about with 14 with Mike Tyson. You needed Mike Tyson to get the real life exposure for Stone Cold.
The problem
They're
with
doing
that
the
is
same thing
Stone
right now.
Cold was the champion and not wrestling in the mid-card like a lot of these guys end up doing. Sheamus may be challenging Daniel Bryan for the title at WrestleMania, but that's sort of like the illusion that they create to make you think they're doing something with them. But if Sheamus was really a big star, he would be going last, and he's not going to even be
And he
close
would face
to
someone like The Undertaker.
Yeah.
Right.
I'd rather see that match.
Because the other big story this year was The Rock coming back,
Right.
right? So if people complaining about The Rock coming in and taking a spot, well, if you were over enough, and granted, that may not be their fault altogether. The company is to blame for a lot of that. But if these guys were pushed to the level where people wanted to see them wrestle The Rock, then it wouldn't be a problem. The reason Rock is wrestling Cena is because he's the one people want to see him wrestle.
Right.
If they had bigger names like Sheamus, Ziggler, Ryder, whoever, that'd be the guy, I'd want to see him wrestle The Rock, and they would get their spots. So I see through a lot of their illusions. They put
Right.
the belts on the guys that they make it seem like they want to, but Triple H and Undertaker are still going to follow them with all the focus.
Right.
That's WWE. TNA had not a stellar year per se. It started off with the big story being Sting almost signing with WWE and going to
Yeah.
WrestleMania. So do you think, in retrospect, because obviously even he wants to have a WrestleMania match
yeah.
against The
Right.
Undertaker,
Yes, he does.
that was the opportunity. He still got cold feet, but was it the right move?
Sting made a mistake by not going to WWE.
He had a good year in TNA, though.
I could care less about it. It's about marketing yourself. It's about getting an audience. It's about getting your name out there. Sting is not prevalent, even though he's in a second top promotion. He's not prevalent to me. He did change his character up this year a little bit, which I did like. I think I liked the little Joker gimmick he was trying to do. I did like it, but I think that for star power, WrestleMania, something you never thought you'd see. Talk about having that as underneath the WrestleMania logo, Sting versus Undertaker. It's a given that those two belong together in a ring one time, that because no one's ever seen it the first time.
Well, he did go back to TNA, and it seems like they have started to shift a little bit, and kicking and screaming, I might add, of putting their guys over someone like Kurt Angle. Of course, they didn't do it when it counted at Bound for Glory, but now at least we're seeing this year at Lockdown, James Storm, Bobby Roode. Maybe too little too late, but it seems like they're finally making that shift. And part of that shift was switching Bruce Pritchard into the head of creative instead of Vince Russo. Do you think it really matters, or does TNA problems go bigger than just whoever's writing at the time?
It's bigger than that. They have a stigmatism, especially after this past year with Jeff Hardy and the shitty Bound for Glory ending. They just have a stigmatism of just not doing the right thing when they should have done it. When they could have made a huge step if they would have done Bound for Glory better. Because the whole pay-per-view was good until the end.
Well, and again, that has
just left a bad taste in your mouth, just like Jeff Hardy did.
That goes back to politics, though, who are writing that stuff. Someone made the switch. Hogan saying it, whoever it is, there's someone in that mix that said something different.
someone who
Because
doesn't
you
wanna
can
make
see the
money.
direction now. Would he have done the same thing?
But the thing is, whoever, much like WWE, whoever's writing it has to
Right.
answer to one person. In
Yeah.
this case, Dixie Carter. In their case, Vince McMahon, of course.
right.
And she said, okay, I suppose. But you mentioned Jeff Hardy, and that was one of the big stories of the year at Victory Road.
How they let him go out there.
Yeah, he went out in no condition to
Horrible.
perform, and they cut the match short. I don't think he even knew it was going to happen.
Right.
And it was a 30-second main event. And what do you think that really says about TNA in general? I don't think it says a lot of good.
No, your main event talent is intoxicating. You're still going to put him out in front of the crowd for a quick 1 minute main event.
Right.
I mean, you're basically shitting on your whole promotion. You're basically giving the middle finger to the fans that paid hard-earned money to watch that product on pay-per-view and also in the crowd.
They had an RVD versus Ken Anderson fight that night that could have brought that in to kind of replace.
They were
that
both
match.
number one contenders
Right.
by the end of that
Right,
pay-per-view.
and we vented on the radio show about that whole incident.
Yes, we did.
We really went off on it, and especially I know I did, and I just could not believe that happened. And who in their right mind would even consider letting that guy go out there, or even not know that guy's condition was so bad? It almost damaged the company, and Spike TV would also look bad too in that deal.
Well, they weren't involved with the pay-per-view.
It doesn't
at all,
have
but
to be involved, but their names and the products under their
Backlash.
name.
I don't even mind that it went 30 seconds. I just mind that they cut the pay-per-view off early instead of coming up with something to
Yeah.
fill the rest of the
Right,
time.
yeah.
Well, the thing that's the worst part about it, this is why, again, we were talking about Sting, how he didn't go. That was like one of the first things Sting did actually after he came back.
Right.
So it's like right off the bat,
Right.
like, dude, I just fucked up.
Right.
He got
I
like
did
the
right.
title immediately.
Right.
Well, the other big story talking about the big three was Ring of Honor got bought by Sinclair Broadcasting Group, which I don't think anybody heard of until this.
No.
And what's funny too is what people don't realize about it, Ring of Honor would not exist right now if this hadn't have happened. Kerry Silkin, the president, was ready to fold the company, and then he sold it to Sinclair Broadcasting, and now it's still around. They've put on some stellar shows since then, more in the pay-per-view territory, but they also seem to have been kind of losing some of their way recently. It seems like a lot of ROH fans were saying in the past year, I spent my money on PWG because they gave me something I wanted to see, and Ring of Honor wasn't doing it.
When I first heard of Sinclair buying ROH, I thought it was great. It's going to be on national TV markets, even though it really isn't.
Syndicated and national are two
Syndicated.
different
Yeah,
things.
but it's not in the big markets where it should be, like Philly, New York, Chicago. They're
They don't want it.
everywhere else that nobody really watches ROH.
Right.
I thought it was going to be great at first, but then now, what are they doing? They have the same guys on every show. They lack talent depth. That's the problem. If you see ROH years ago, they had Punk, Joe, Aries, Danielson, a whole slew of performers that could put on a great show.
Japanese
Yeah,
guys.
yeah, and especially that, like now they're having their 10th anniversary show. No ROH title in the main event, and they're having the same two guys on the same New York shows over and over, when they could be having guys come in from, say, Pro Wrestling Noah, bringing in something new. At first, I thought it would be great, but now when I see what it's coming to, it's not so great.
At the very least, they at least gave us a match of the year candidate, which was Davey Richards and Eddie Edwards at Best
Yeah.
in the World, which I particularly enjoyed. But what do you guys think was match of the year?
Punk Cena, Money in the Bank.
I think that's what most will say.
And
Yeah.
I think you can agree with me, don't you?
Yeah, I would go with that as well. Also, Hulk Hogan and Sting at Bound for Glory. 'Cause
I would too.
We were there, and we brought this up in the last show and the radio show. Not always wrestling is needed in these matches to really make it memorable.
What match did you react to, and were you emotionally involved
Right,
in the most
emotionally-
that
And
match?
that
standpoint,
one I
probably.
was, especially the ending of the match, because that's when us three stood up and were like chanting, and we were loving it. It's like bringing us back to where we love wrestling again.
Punk Cena, the whole unpredictability of the event, of the match, and Vince McMahon coming out
And
at
the
the
crowd.
end. The crowd
Crowd, oh my
helped
God.
really make that match.
Well, no, it's crazy. Even on Battle of the Wills, we were even talking about how we were not looking forward to it. Because I thought Punk was going to lose, he's going to be gone, he's going to whatever, it's going to be a throwaway pay-per-view. Holy crap, are we wrong, man.
Yeah,
There were some good counters and transitions in that too. But who do you think was Wrestler of the Year? I think we've narrowed it down.
Yeah, I would say Mark Henry was one of the biggest wrestlers of the year, and that is because from where that guy came from to where he is right now, they finally knew how to book Mark Henry, how he should have been booked the first time. And I thought him becoming World Heavyweight Champion this year was right for it, and everybody supported it.
They're already killing you right now for not saying CM Punk.
Right. Someone else is going to say it, so that's why I'm just doing it, okay?
Kevin Steen, he really is the hottest guy in the independent scene, and I can see why. I see him live twice now, and literally in front of my face. He is like, wow, he's really got the crowd going, really got me going. I don't even know the guy.
Most of his year happened in PWG though.
And he was killing it,
Right.
And he was, but I gotta go.
Took one
Got the
microphone.
obvious answer. You gotta go see CM Punk. He really became the new guy. And his merchandising. If you go to events, it seems like half the crowd has his
Right.
shirt.
I mean, he outsells John Cena, but I have to go with Kevin Steen, especially from watching his stuff with PWG. He had one match all year in ROH, and he was still the most
Prevalent.
over guy in
Prevalent.
the company.
And we saw that in the crowd.
He wrestled 16 times on 8 shows in PWG
Right.
against the best independent talents all over the world. So I think, to me, he solidified his position this year.
Can we give an honorable mention though to Zack Ryder, for a guy who totally got himself over on the TV, on the YouTube, and then finally got himself on TV, and eventually got a petition to get himself a title shot.
We were all there, Survivor Series. The man is
Oh,
over.
yeah. Yeah.
Just by crowd reaction alone, you would have thought he was bigger than Cena.
A YouTube show and a catchphrase make you Wrestler of the Year. But
Well,
anyway,
congratulations.
Honorable mention. Honorable mention.
I
He's got a
understand
lot
what you
of
mean. I
catchphrases
understand what you
now,
mean.
though.
But Randy Orton had a pretty good year too. People liked his work. They may not have liked the way he was booked, but they really liked his.
What I like about Randy Orton is that he helped build some talent this year. Christian got his World
yeah.
Heavyweight title. Wade Barrett got his little rub this year.
Mark Henry.
Mark Henry got a rub this year. So I think Orton really shows that he's not the Orton that kind of got the bad rap in the beginning, where he was kind of not doing that. He's kind of like a dick in a way, basically. But he really proved this year, to me anyway, that he's a star and that he really does want to help this company grow.
He's a team
and hopefully
player now.
soon, a team player, and hopefully soon that he will get up to that plateau where he is just as good as Punk and Cena, because I feel like he's kind of been off the chain a little bit.
Michael Elgin had a pretty breakout year in Ring of Honor, which is great. We're going to see even more out of him soon. But Daniel Bryan also finally broke
Right.
through and
Yeah.
got the world heavyweight title as a heel, which people seem to really be enjoying.
Right.
If they didn't really care for him in the first place, which I still think they did. But regardless, Davey Richards may have had a big year finally getting the title too late, but also wrestling over in Japan for New Japan. But let's not forget the great moment at Manhattan Mayhem 4 when Eddie Edwards won the title when no one
yeah.
expected it. Eddie Edwards is another guy you could see the growth over the years. He's very good in the ring, maybe not character or promo-wise, but he definitely brings it in the ring, and that was such a great moment when he won the world title from Roderick Strong in Ring of Honor, and people seem to overlook that as the years gone
I
by.
remember first seeing Eddie Edwards in ROH with his braids. I thought he was horrible. So yeah, he's definitely grown to being the first Triple Crown winner in
Well,
ROH.
I think we all remember the first time we saw Brock Lesnar, and that's who we're going to
segue.
talk about next. Brock Lesnar's career in pro wrestling.